Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special Four Lads Had a Dream podcast. We are in episode 5 of the Rangers years, following on from Stephen Naismith, Mark Haitley, Gordon Smith, and Davy Robertson. I'm delighted to say one of my very favourite Rangers players is indeed Chris Burke. Chris, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you for inviting me on, Stevie. And the names you've just gave there is put me under a little bit of pressure for this podcast. So hopefully I'll do it some justice.
We were laughing just before we hit the record button how we're going to remember everything, but we're going to do our best, ladies and gentlemen. Chris, you burst onto the scene in early 2000s, not so much for football, but for a programme on the BBC, which you were part of. And suddenly yourself and Charlie Adam were like the big stars of that. And you became at the forefront of people's kind of imagination, because you were the guys coming through in that youth team. Talk me through what that was like in that early exposure.
That's a great question. A good start as well. Yeah, so it was probably ahead of its time if you really think about it, Stevie. Yeah. A lot of Netflix, Amazon, they do the sort of football programmes now, don't they, and show the insights of academies and now first team. So yeah, Rangers were definitely ahead of the time there. I thought it was a great programme to show that inside a football organisation and how the academy works. I think it was excellent that. They must have followed us for about over a season. We didn't really know much about it, but when they first came in, but it was a good eye opener for you. There was lots of obviously cameras there on certain days where they would watch you train, and then they would bring you in for little discussions and ask you what you were feeling that day. They would come to your house. I remember coming to they had a surprise party and they came to that as well. There was so many different occasions in that season where they came and followed us, and probably myself was just came at the right time when they actually filmed, because I made my debut and scored in my debut against Kilmarnock. So it showed you that journey from trying to make to get an appearance for Rangers, and that happened. And there was others as well, where the likes that you said, Charlie Adam, he was a year below me. They watched him sign his contract and get himself into the under 18s, and then obviously went on to a great career. And you had other players as well, which I thought was really good, where players that just didn't hit the level or make that level at Rangers. So I thought everybody engaged with it. I thought the Rangers fans loved it. And I was part of that product for it. Do you know what it did do though? It actually made me, be very good. Well, not very good, but at that age, quite good in front of the camera. I think it helped you for that, to be able to speak, because it's quite daunting when you've got lots of different cameras in front of you at that age. You have to obviously do interviews a lot, so that helped me in that sort of sense in the media. Don't get me wrong, Rangers were really good at that level. They would put media training on for the likes of myself and others, but I thought it was a very, very good insight in it, and I'd like to think it did shed a good light in the football club.
Yeah, it definitely did. I remember watching Blue Heaven and being really intrigued about who was coming through and what we're getting. We've jumped. I don't want to talk about your debut quite yet, but I want to talk a little bit about you coming through, obviously, because you started, or at least your move to Rangers came on the back of living and growing up at Celtic. And obviously you're let go from there, or you left there. And how was that move to Rangers, and what was that like? And who became your mentors at Rangers? Who became the ones that really helped to guide that early? And how did you deal with the move? Because it's not such a big thing at that age. It happens quite a lot. But for you, were you able to adapt and things all right?
Yeah, no, do you know what? That's probably the first time anybody's ever asked me a question like that, and I'm glad you did, because yes, I did play for Celtic, but back then, and it's totally different now in the academies where you can only choose one football club and they hold you down and they tie you down. But back when I was still at that age, you could go from club to club. I could go down to England and obviously play. I played for certain clubs there as well, and there was an October break or whatever, and got a feel for different environments. But see, ultimately, Rangers were fantastic with me, and you talk about obviously mentors. There was so many, and I'd probably hate to miss a few, but there was obviously John Chalmers, who passed away, who was part of the Rangers Academy. He was a huge influence. There was other people there that obviously brought me up and coached me really, really well, but I loved Rangers the most. That was it. I loved walking in there. They made you feel welcome. I thought the environment was fantastic. The culture was great. And they played me in my position. When I was at Celtic, I did play on the wing, but I did play in the middle of the pitch. Believe it or not, they played me there. And Rangers obviously seen me as an out-and-out winger. And I just loved every time turning up and playing for them. So obviously supporting the club and then being there to actually see it, put the jersey on, the iconic strip. I always remember, the Nike tick. They were always sponsored with Nike, and they had the stripe across there. It was the strip, I'm sure, that the likes of Reno Gattuso wear and Brian Laudrup, and I loved watching Brian Laudrup play. I thought he was terrific. He was one of my idols. So if you're talking about obviously mentors, I would hate to mention them all, because I would miss a few obviously, but they were terrific with me. But they just made me feel welcome. It's as simple as that. Any kid in the academy, you have to make them feel valued, make them feel welcome, and they most certainly did that. And that's ultimately why. And fortunate enough, I had an option. Maybe a lot of people wouldn't know this, but I had the option either sign for Arsenal or sign for Rangers, and I chose Rangers, and I didn't look back.
That's brilliant. I love that. So let's now skip towards that aforementioned debut at Kilmarnock. It was a very wet midweek. Rangers weren't having the best of time in the league, and you managed to get some minutes. But it was a game that's fondly remembered, not only for your debut, but for an Andrzej Kanchelskis moment. I remember being at the game and going, what did he do there? And for people that don't remember, it was down the right-hand side, and he almost tried to do like a pirouette and just ended up like jumping in the air and twisting round, and everybody in the stadium was just like that. What happened there? And then you came on, and typical right-hand side, first thought in your mind, let's go and have a run, let's go and see what you do, get on one-on-one, take your defender on the outside and then drill it across, and it goes. And somewhat poetic that it was against Kilmarnock, because you would have such a brilliant later career, and still to this day, obviously we'll talk a wee bit about your move and things coming up, but such an affinity with Kilmarnock for your debut and that goal to come in that game, quite something. So all of a sudden, Chris Burke was a name that was getting discussed among the Rangers support even more. How did that feel, and what was the build-up like? And Alex McLeish obviously putting you in that game and things like that. How did all that come about? Do you remember? This is a good while ago.
Well, I'll try and simplify it for everybody. So when I signed for Rangers, Dick Advocat was obviously the manager. He took a shine to me. I trained with him quite regularly. Obviously, then when he left, it kind of gradually happened where Alex McLeish, it was the exact same. I got to train with the first team a lot, and somebody got injured on the day. They just didn't make it. I think there was a late fitness check, and then I was the one that stepped in, so I wasn't even supposed to be on the bench. I was like you know what it's like when you see the young academy players, or a player that's been training with the first team, they travel with the squad and they're the one that's left out. or one or two that's left out, so I actually made the bench. Not much I can think about, obviously, on that night. It was quite of a blur, but when, fortunate enough at that time, when you're playing at home at Rangers, when you're 2, 3, 4 goals up, you actually think you might have a chance of getting on. I didn't really think that it would have been me, because obviously there was high profile players on the bench. But Alex McLeish, another mentor, fantastic with me, gave me that opportunity. And see, the thing is, there's so many talented players at a young age. You just have to grab that opportunity. And fortunately for me, the game was open. Rangers had already won the game. I come on for the last, 11, 12 minutes or so. And you're right. The one thing I do remember is when McLeish was ready to put me on, he just said, just go and enjoy it, keep it simple. But when you get that opportunity, just go and do your thing, which again might sound so simple, but it does help somebody like myself, obviously a younger player coming on, because it's very, very daunting. But the Rangers fans were behind me. They always love to see an academy player, make that step and play for the first team. So I don't know if I would have got that goal now, just because of the amount of television and VAR and stuff like that, because it did take a slight deflection. But it was a fantastic moment. And when that goal went in, that's when it became like in slow motion. It was crazy. I just think it was Maurice Ross and the rest of them ran over to me and lifted me up. And yeah, it was such a weird and strange moment, but one I will never ever forget, because the next day, the next morning, Stevie, I had to, obviously I would walk to the subway, get the subway to the train station to Rangers training centre, and you got the paper, the Metro. I don't know if that's still there now, but I looked in the back of it on the train myself, going to Rangers training centre, and it's my picture of myself, the very celebration. And I'm thinking to myself, people are reading this Metro here, and I'm actually sitting next to them. It was so strange as a young kid seeing that for the first time. But back to reality, because I had a youth team game, an under-18s game with John Brown. The day after, so I was training with the 18s straight after it, and then get a game the next day, the following day after that. So you have to just go straight back to work and make sure you're still humble, and that's one of the main things that were fantastic with myself at Rangers. As much as it might teach you tactically, technically, but that culture of you're still here, you've not made it. It's good that you've made it for the first time. You've still a lot of hard work to do, and you're here to obviously help your teammates that you've been with for the past season or two with the academy. So I was straight back into the youth team game on the Friday.
Talk to me about making that step up and becoming a first team regular, like the move round to the first team dressing room, that official confirmation that Chris Burke is no longer a youth player, that Chris Burke is now Rangers first team.
Yeah, no, that's God rest his soul, obviously, Jimmy Bell, who was a huge influence again. People don't realise how much an influence it was until you're actually in there. I know obviously people speak so highly of him, but even from the academy staff, the first team staff, he was part of an upbringing for myself hugely. So when you obviously get the nod to say that you're going round, Jimmy would take you round to your spot. You would be designated a number. You get obviously given that number, and you go round there to the first team. Listen, they'll give you that banner and stuff like that. They'll try and not make you feel intimidated, but you know what it's like when you're in that environment at football. I'm sure a lot have said that to you, that a younger kid, but I had a fantastic change room and a fantastic upbringing. That's what probably made me the player, that another career that I had, just because of so many strong characters, but good characters, that would look after you. So Going round there, it is daunting, but at the same time, they're very complimentary, they're encouraging, they give you that healthy demand to make sure you're doing things properly, even to look after your locker room properly, because you have to show a sign of respect when you're in that first team changing room. So it is very surreal when you're given that locker, Stevie, to then know that you're going round to that obviously that huge area, the first team changing room. But don't get me wrong, even when you're a younger kid in that changing room, you still actually go round and see the lads that you've been playing with the season before or whatever, to see them. So it was still a togetherness, no matter if you were round at the first team or you still want to see your mates that were in the academy who haven't made that step yet. So that just shows you how together we were at that time. But it's so hard to explain, Stevie, that the great feeling you have when you get that nod to say that you'll be getting changed round at the first team, and then training with the first team every single day. Sometimes that's, well, I can only speak for myself, but you can play as many games as you can for obviously Rangers. You want to play as many as you can, but the way to get better as well for myself is training with these sort of players, their characters, their personalities, because no disrespect, we could play a game at home, win 4 or 5-0, win 2-0, whatever it is, play away from home. I could play against that opponent at left back, but it's not any better. I'm playing against better players every day in training, so I'm getting better that way. Sometimes people don't realise that when I'm training against Fernando Rickson, Arthur Newman, all the defenders that were there, midfielders as well, that demand you get, so that keeps you on your toes. And then when it comes to a game, you would like to think that helps you, that it gets you to the level you want to get to when you're playing in a match day for the first team squad. So an unbelievable upbringing. I could speak to that for hours and hours, that people don't realise how many good characters were in that changing room that made me the person who I was, players and staff, but also as well as the technical and tactical side as well.
Yeah, and I was going to mention as well, because you can't be a shrinking violet in that, because you had the demands of Barry Ferguson, you had Ronald de Boer, you had these guys who are just winners. And then you had Alex McLeish as your coach and manager, who has come into Rangers and delivered a double, a treble. And then as you began to kind of flirt around the team and get into the team, we had a difficult season and then bounce back and do another amazing double. And then, we end with the last 16 in the Champions League and stuff like that. So it can't have been easy because of the demands. And I know what Barry's like, and Barry spoke to me before about his demands and just that will to win. But if you're not strong enough mentally to understand that the drive is the want to win and it's not personal and things like that, you could fail and you could maybe begin to shrink a wee bit. But I think it's testament to you that you made it in that group, because that's as tough as it's probably going to get.
Yeah, no, obviously that's nice that you've said that, but you're totally right. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes the game becomes easier when you were playing at that at that stage at Rangers, because of the characters and the personalities and the ability they all had. The likes of De Boers. So fortunate to play with both De Boers. So fortunate to play and train alongside Claudio Caniggia. Play with Mikel Arteta, Barry Ferguson, Arthur Newman, Fernando Rickson, there's so many players. Michael Moles, made my life easy. All I needed to do was cut inside and slip him through, and he would do his turn and score. It's quite simple. Or I would pass the ball inside to Barry Ferguson, who would then make a pass that would then get into the final third. Sometimes, as much as I like to attack and dribble and show that individual quality, sometimes it's just passing to the best players in the football pitch for myself was so easy, because they players would just find their own space. Frank de Boer, fantastic player, very, very intelligent. Ronald de Boer, Frank de Boer was probably ahead of his time as a centre-back. Like, how many, not many back then would be a centre-back that steps into midfield and then finds a switch of play or a breakthrough pass. I remember when he first came on the scene and I was playing, maybe step out of centre-back, step into midfield and switch the play very quickly to me. And the first couple of times I wasn't ready because I wasn't expecting it. Just breaking that pass the way he would step in to myself. So I had to be ready for that, because it would give me a look to say, you need to be ready the next time for that. But that just shows you the quality that obviously I was dealing with every single day in training, not just myself, but even for the younger players. It was an unbelievable upbringing, and probably something that I took for granted at times, because if I'm honest with you, I believe that I underachieved at Rangers as much as I maybe have played over 100 games. I felt as if I gave myself a little bit more focus and concentration, that I should have probably took advantage of it a bit more. Yes, I did obviously listen and learn, and the likes of shot of a lads, take me after sessions and help me with my opposite foot and how to cross the ball. Their little nuggets are fantastic, little insights that again helped me in my career. But everybody probably says to themselves, the older head, I wish I probably done a little bit more when you were younger. So for my sort of sense, I felt as if I probably could have done more, but that's all down to me. But I would never ever change it for the world. I was so fortunate to play with these sort of players. It was incredible.
Now we're going to get into the thick of things, because you do have a really strong 2003-2004 Champions League as well, having get past Copenhagen. We then get Stuttgart, Panathinaikos, Manchester United. You would play over 40 games that season and notch, I think, 5 goals. And it's really interesting because those goals were all very similar. I don't know if you will think about that until we kind of talk about it a wee bit. Hibs, Hearts, Dunfermline, Livy, they're all got one thing in common. It's Chris Burke on the right-hand side at the back post. And whether or not it was a finish or you're sliding in, or I think even the Dunfermline one where you've cut it, it's all right-hand side. It's all where you should be. It's almost like all that training, all that running, everything should be where it is. Overall, it's not a great season for Rangers. Barry would leave quite early on, and Rangers were flying. I think we won the first 7 or 8 games in the league. Michael Ball gets finally back and fit and stuff, and Rangers are looking very good. And then for some reason or another, it just kind of comes off the rails. And I think a lot to do with the amount of players we'd lost at that time, and players coming in, maybe you get that early boost and it doesn't sustain. But for you, although Rangers weren't successful, for you properly became, I suppose, cemented in the first team and part of that squad, and it would lead you on to more. But that season was really a lot of big moments for you, as much as the team maybe didn't do as well as we wanted them to.
No, you're right. Probably individually, and if I was looking at my own career, like that was probably, if not one of my best, if not my best season. Looked as if I was kicked on from the season before. Would have liked to have obviously for the football club to have been successful as well as I was being successful. Of course, I would have, win trophies, etc. But it wasn't to be. Champions League was unbelievable experiencing that. But you're right. Listen, that comes down to listening to the forward players that were my mentors, to say it's not always the pretty goal you need to score. Yes, can you score the pretty goals of cutting inside using your left foot, or shifting it and shooting with your right foot and putting in the top corner? But it's the goals as well that you get the tap-ins that will help you score more. Again, it's probably something that I didn't really add to my game till later on in my career, unfortunately when I left Rangers, where I scored more goals and get into double figures. But I learned a lot from previous at Rangers, knowing that I had to add that to my game. But again, it just came down to repetition of being put in that position. Brings back to the point where that's why I signed for Rangers, is one of the main reasons why I signed for Rangers as well, because they love playing me in the right hand side. I never really changed that position. Always played that position, and they made me feel very, very valued in that position and coached me well in it. So as much, yeah, Stevie, you're right. We had obviously, it was a challenging season for us, but selfishly, obviously, in my career, it's one that I will remember probably more than most Rangers fans.
So we go into 2004, 2005. You're very much part of it. You start up at Aberdeen. I don't know if you remember that, a roasting hot day. Rangers would draw 0-0 in a game where we hit the bar and we hit the post and Lovenkrands, overhead kicks and all sorts that kind of never really got there. Just an unbelievable day. Should have won. We didn't. We draw 0-0, and you remember the reaction to that was we've lost the league, and I remember the reaction being completely toxic. But something happened with you, and you disappeared, and it was different back then. This is 20 years ago, so it's not as hyped as it was now. There wasn't the constant press conferences, because press conferences are now, 3 times a week, and there wasn't really any questions about where Chris Burke was, and nobody knew what was going on. And it would later, you had a viral kind of infection that really took its toll on you.
Yeah, I know. I got the shingles, and it took me a long, long time to recover from that. I don't know why. Obviously, everybody's body's totally different. It was a bit worrying and concerning. But I remember that day, yes, I felt totally fine on the day. Even though it was hot, I don't know if that obviously triggered things for that to happen. Maybe it was already inside me or already coming to fruition. But I just remember at half time, I didn't feel that great. But as a young kid, starting the first game of the season, you want to do well. We're not obviously winning the game, obviously taking the fluids. But I just felt a bit dizzy inside the changing room. I just thought obviously because of the heat, so I didn't drink enough. So obviously I started drinking a little bit more. But then when I stepped out at half time, in the second half, when I walked out the pitch, I just felt, if anybody ever feels a bit faint, how they're feeling is, it's just the noise is a bit muffly. You feel a bit lightheaded. It's just feel off. I tried to stay on my feet as much as I could, because it is a bit embarrassing when you faint on a football pitch. Well, that's how you feel anyway, even though you shouldn't. But yeah, and before you know it, I was on the floor. I think they just kicked off, and I was on the floor. I actually remember being sick, and then obviously I blacked out. And then since then, the next day I think we had a European game, because I remember flying out. But when I was flying out, I felt awful. I was feeling worse, and then before you know it, they just kept me in the room, kept me in quarantine. I remember I was sharing the room with Peter Lovenkrands. He get moved out to then go and get another room himself. I can't really remember. Maybe you'll be able to remember when you look back in the records of who we played. And then, yeah, I think it was
Copenhagen. I think it was Copenhagen after the Aberdeen game. So we would go to Denmark and win 2-1, I think. So it could possibly be that one.
Yeah, you're right. So that, and then ever since then, Steve, it was probably a good season before I actually get back. I did try to return a bit earlier, didn't work, and yeah, so it took a long, long time. But concerning for like a younger kid, obviously back then you don't have much as the science and the data, and like you said, obviously people asking questions but the doctors were fantastic. Dr. McGuinness was terrific with me. The other, Paul Jack, he was terrific as well. Dr. Jackson, they were really, really helpful and very patient with me as well. So I did return, obviously, but not at the time that I wanted to return. But no, it was weird. It was weird, so weird, and that is what it is. You just have to go on with it and dig in and find grit and determination and try and return to your true self again.
You were still heavily involved in that season, but it must have been a lot for you, Chris, mentally to deal with that, because out of the spotlight as a young guy coming through, thinking you've you've made it, which you have, you're part of the first team, and then to deal with this thing and then trying to get it diagnosed, trying to understand, like, because you must have been, it's all right to say, I think, you must have been scared, you must have been wondering what the hell's going on. And then to be able to bounce back and play such a part in what was a pivotal season for Rangers, one of the most fondly thought of Helicopter Sunday, Rangers doing the double under Alex McLeish. I mean, a wild season, a completely wild season, the way that one went. But that must have given you a sense of satisfaction to be back and involved in that one.
Yeah, no, listen, it was good. But if I was honest, it probably wasn't my true self. You know, I was still trying to recover from it. But to talk about obviously the team and being successful and talk about Helicopter Sunday, that was obviously that helped the situation a little bit more. And I knew obviously after that I could bounce back the following season, get a little bit of a rest in the pre-season, in the summer, then go back and hit the ground running hopefully at pre-season.
And it's strange because looking back on your career at Rangers for, you know, best part of 7-8 years as a first team professional, that was your Premier League medal. That was your only winning medal to be part of, and I found that, or properly affiliated with it. I found that surprising. How does that then rank on? Talk about a wee bit about like Helicopter Sunday and about that season as a whole, because there was a point in that season, Chris, I don't know if you remember, and you maybe were out still at that point, but Alex McLeish was about to be sacked. And we went up to Pittodrie in a cup game, and we won 2-0. Fernando Rickson scored a free kick. Stevie Thompson got a second. Bob Malcolm got sent off in the game. And if we hadn't won that game, Alex McLeish was done. And it was that point, I don't know if you remember, that there was some atrocious reporting in the papers with Alex face on the back page with donkey ears and all sorts of stuff was going on. And Alex was pretty much on his way out. And David Murray stood by him, and it proved to be ultimately correct. Rangers would have 2 strong wins against Celtic in November and really kind of kick on. But, you know, you talk about sliding doors moments in a season. In that year, there was so many. And the mental strength, I think, of that group, because you had Novo, you had Purcell, you had Alex Ray, you had Boomsong, and then you had Marvin Andrews, you know, playing with his knee and all sorts of stuff. You had Fernando Rickson having the year of his life. Barry would come back. Ronald Vatrus comes in for Stefan Kloss, who Stefan Kloss been our leader and all sorts, and he has a dreadful injury. There was just so much thrown at that team that year, so many ups and downs, and Rangers would come through to be, you know, the most unlikely and most incredible finish to a season. And I spoke to so many of the boys that were involved in that day, and, you know, obviously Alex, Michael Ball, Shota Arveladze, whose memory of that day is absolutely atrocious. But, you know, just, oh God, honestly. But it was so funny talking to him about it, talking to Maurice Ross, you know, just so many. But what was it like overall, I think, to be involved in that season? Because I don't know if you remember, even the day we went to Dundee and missed all those penalties, and then we got another one, and Mikel Arteta scores, and it was that 2-2 game, and you think we've blown it, and we come back and we do manage to win it in the most incredible kind of. What was it like? What talk about like dressing rooms after and the feeling at the club, and like, I don't think you'll ever see the likes of that again in that dramatic fashion, the way, you know, final minutes. And it was sensational to be, as a supporter, to live that. It was incredible. But to be actually involved in that squad and be around it and, you know, live through that, you know, it is sensational. You must look back on that with a lot of pride to be involved in that.
Oh, of course, yeah, no, first and foremost, obviously, fantastic that we won it on Helicopter Sunday. I think everybody will remember that for the history of Rangers. And the challenge you spoke about there, it just shows you how much Alex McLeish, the gaffer, had to go through to cope with, not just obviously the injury concerns, having to bounce back from certain games, but dealing with the media, you know, what the pressure's like in Scotland, you know. It's so tough. You have to take that outside noise and just concentrate and focus on the job at hand, and that's what he was great at. And it was an unbelievable memory, especially obviously the season that I've had. It was a pick me up. I didn't get on, but what I remember of it is on the day was obviously we knew that we were probably still the underdogs, and it looked as if Celtic were going to go and take it, but you just never know. The lead up to it was, Marvin, keep believing. Obviously, with the injury that had, such an upbeat character. And you talk about culture, you need these sort of people in the room to keep that culture good. And as much as you talk about, again, I'll talk about it, and I'm not going to shy away from it. As much as you talk about tactics, formations, game plan, see, if you don't get that culture right and that together this night in that changing room, then you don't go and win Helicopter Sunday. That's the bottom line. I think, obviously, we're winning the game. I just remember, like, both teams, I'm sure Hibs were making Europe, and they didn't want to,
That's right. Yep.
to lose by more goals of some sort, I'm sure. So I just remember, both teams in the last 10 minutes or so just passing it along the back. It was such a slow tempo game, but both teams in their own right got there for their own ways, and deservedly so. And I just always remember after it, it was such like disbelief but joy as well. Hearing that noise and hearing obviously the result of Celtic. And ever since then, it was just a relief. But like, we did it, and obviously Marvin saying that we will keep believing. It was obviously saying, "I told you so. I told you so." Was terrific. What an experience, and one that I will remember and cherish forever, because it was, as much as that's another thing. As much as you play for, like, I played for Rangers, you always think, I've won a medal there. I'll get another one. Like, I never really got another league medal. Which was obviously unfortunate for myself. So I will most certainly cherish that one for the rest of my life. I've got it framed in my house with a picture, obviously, me with myself, but I've got that medal there framed with it. So I think everybody will always remember Helicopter Sunday for all the right reasons and all the good reasons.
Oh, absolutely. The following season, again, is one that really turbulent. Alex McLeish again on the brink, and it's incredible to think about a man who delivered a double, treble, double, and had, like, in the middle of those moments, had some of the most horrendous moments. Because I think in that season, Rangers went 10 games without winning. And I remember being 2-0 up at home to Falkirk in a game when you were like, we're finally going to win, and they pegged us back to 2 each. And Ibrox was, as you can imagine, apoplectic. But in the middle of all that, we were in the Champions League, and we had, Inter, Porto, Villarreal, and the squad isn't the best, or not the best we've had under Alex McLeish. He's had to wheel and deal. Financially, things were beginning to really take a grip, and he lost a lot of players. We're having to deal in, I think in the team that beat Porto at home, no disrespect to these guys, and it's not meaning to be, but we had like Ollie Bernard, Francis Jeffers, and that started those games, and they weren't the strongest squad that we've had. But Rangers found a way to become the first team to get through that group, and you were involved heavily in it. You had a big part in the equaliser over in Porto for Ross McCormack, getting again to the byline and favourite position. And what was your overall memories of that? I mean, becoming the first, Scottish team to get through, and even when we played Villarreal, we could have beat them. We missed.
Yeah.
We missed chances out there. 2 each out there. 2 each at Ibrox, and then 1 each out there. Boydie has his chance, which he doesn't manage to take. And we were tremendous that night. Scored some great goals against them. Lovenkrands obviously in the thick of things, and that was a season again where we shouldn't have been in the position we were, but we done ourselves proud in Europe with some incredible games. What's your memories of like Inter and the Porto games? Porto at home was wild. The 3-2 victory, barging the goalie in and that goal counting, it should never have probably stood. And then going to Porto and getting that equaliser, and getting that result and being able to go, we done really well against Inter over there, closed doors game, and then, drawn with them at home and stuff. There were so many highs and so many moments in that season, European wise, that you must look back fondly on.
Oh, what you're saying there, definitely. That Champions League is top level. Like, to play in that, to hear the music, we did extremely well. And you're talking about the challenges again Alex McLeish had to deal with, doing the wheeling and dealing, and that just shows you the manager he was at Rangers, getting the best out of the group, individually and collectively, no matter what, because that group's a tough group. If you really think about it, only 2 teams can go through. What I remember to start with the Champions League was, I absolutely loved it, but there was probably a light bulb moment for me in my career, and I probably haven't said it to many people, but the manager and the coaching staff, they were trying to maybe develop me into playing a little bit more inside, because the game was evolving as wingers. They started to play a little bit more inside, and also defensively to secure the middle of the pitch, because you started playing against the foreign teams. They would overload the middle of the pitch, and it was something that I wasn't my strongest point in my early part of my career, because I was so used to get the ball out to Chris in the wing and then he'll do his thing. So it was taking me a little bit of time to get used to. Obviously, a younger player, you would switch off in certain moments, and you just need to be that consistent in that. So I was, at that moment in time, there was other players that were better at me at that, and I had to get better at it. And it wasn't until Inter Milan, when we played at home, where it all clicked for me, where I had to play more inside. What a game that was. I remember they score first from a corner, and I actually was on the second. I was actually on the post, and the ball goes in, and I was thinking maybe I could have cleared that there, or cleared it off the line, but I think it was a bullet header, and before you know it was in the back of the net. But in that game, I probably felt as if I matured, selfishly, if I'm talking about individually, and we got a fantastic result for that, because that was a top Inter Milan team, and we done terrific. Talk about Porto, obviously, the second post, talking about that, the cross comes in, I have a knockdown at the back post to a header for Ross McCormack to put in. What a moment that was, because, don't get me wrong, Porto were terrific, especially at the beginning of the game. I thought they blew us away, but we dug in. And then Villarreal, we were terrific against Villarreal. We had momentum as well. I thought we for some reason in Europe, we felt as if we had momentum, we had confidence, we knew we could compete against the top teams. Because Villarreal at that time were a sensational football team. He likes Riquelme in the middle of the pitch. What a player he was.
Forlan.
What?
Diego Forlan.
Yeah, Diego Forlan. Senna as well in the middle of the pitch as well. Like the list is on if you actually look at the team lineups. I don't know how it would go now though, Steve. Obviously we drew both games. I don't know whether would that go in extra time just because aggregate's not a thing now.
That would go in extra time now, yeah. Yeah, it would.
And you're right about Boydie. I would have probably had one of the most memorable assists ever, because I put the ball across the face, and 9 times or even 10 times, 99.9 times out of 10, he's putting that ball in the back of the net, and he just never. And what a moment that would have been. And I'll tell you something else. Never ever experienced the amount of fans that supported us at Villarreal away. It was incredible. On the bus, it just felt as if it was a home game before we actually entered. They were just walking with us on the bus. The bus had to go so slow. A big game, and they travelled in their numbers, and unfortunately we just didn't go over the line. So obviously we didn't do well in the league. We think we were poor in that, but the Champions League probably hampered that. if I'm honest with you. I think everybody would
Because we didn't
probably
have the
agree
squad.
with me.
Yeah,
So
we didn't have the squad under Alex at that point.
obviously, what do you take from that? Do you take the memorable moment of the Champions League, or obviously do well in the league? And it was a hard balancing act for the manager and the coaching staff. Such a hard balancing act, because even the likes of myself, I wasn't purely proven to maybe deal with Champions League football and league football, and there was a lot of myself sort of players that were in that group.
Yeah, Alex McLeish would leave, and Rangers would appoint Paul Le Guen, and we all know how that played out. I'm not interested in the kind of asking you about the dynamics of dressing rooms, and we've heard all the stories, I think. But Paul Le Guen would come and go quite quickly. You did feature quite a bit. That, from memory, left foot shot against Dundee United outside the box in the 2-2 draw. I think we were 2-0 down. And
Yeah, we were.
your celebration when you were, I don't know what you were doing with that one, but
I can tell you what that is if you want.
Yeah, I think you dragged that right foot onto left, hit a tremendous left foot shot into the corner. Rangers would draw two each that day. But Le Guen came and went. He didn't really work. I think that's fair.
Oh, yeah, no. Listen, how many managers, football players, they go to a Celtic and a Rangers, and sometimes it just doesn't work out, and it never worked out. I think if anything, I would say, I've said it before, I think he probably tried to change too much too early. I think when you come to Scotland and you manage a football club like Rangers, and in Scotland you need to adapt to the culture, because the culture and our style of football is totally different from anywhere else. Every culture is a little bit different, but you probably you never know how hard it is to manage a Imagine Rangers Football Club until you're actually in the door. And if I was to talk about myself that season, I got injured when we went to, I'm sure we went to South Africa or Australia. It was a long pre-season trip. And day 2 or 3, the pitches were terrible. And I rolled my ankle and I was out, and there was no point in me getting a flight back. So I missed a lot of pre-season. I think that was my first game back. I come off the bench, we were getting beat 2-0 at home. And then I think the second goal was an own goal. If I'm honest with you, I think a player put the ball in the back of his net by confusion with the goalkeeper and the defender. So we did pull a draw back, but ultimately that's not good enough for Rangers. We should be no disrespect to Dundee United, but we should be winning it's most certainly our home games in that. So it was a short spell, and then obviously moved on to bigger and better things.
And that's exactly what I was going to talk about. Walter Smith comes back, and let's talk about it. It seems like a nice way to kind of round up your career as such, because little do we know Walter coming back would ultimately lead to what it did, that run to Europe, which you were heavily involved in again until injury. But Walter, he comes in, the first thing he does, Davy Weir, Ugo Ekwio, Kevin Thompson, he just spined the team. We probably, ironically, Chris, heading into January for Rangers, you probably need to do these things again. And people of my age still talk about we need to do what Walter did. But to go back to that, like, what was Walter Smith and Ali and Kenny like? What was that dynamic like?
I think it was most certainly close to the perfect coaching staff you could ask for. They all had different characters and personalities, but they all came to a perfect formula, and that showed in the results and what they achieved at the football club. Walter Smith was an unbelievable human being, first and foremost, but also a very, very good coach and manager. And I didn't obviously realise until you got older and you start reflecting of what sort of traits you want to take into your own coaching, and you take that, because he delegated very well. He knew instantly the strengths of each individual. His problem solving was really, really quick. His decision making was really, really quick of probably what's needed, like you said, and bringing players in and what's needed to be successful at Rangers. And that's what I noticed. Very calming figure, but at the same time had that aura. And it's really, really hard to have that, have that both in you. And whether that was just how he was and how that naturally came about, but he definitely had that in him. He had so many attributes to be a top, to manage Rangers, coach Rangers, to be a leader, and to be successful. He knew what was needed to be successful at Rangers, and I think no matter what I say, it won't do any justice to put into words how much we all admire Walter Smith and what he achieved for the football club. But I'm sure he'll also say that he appreciated his staff as well, because the staff were fantastic.
Walter would come in, and 2007, 2008 would become one of the most sensational Rangers seasons. At one point, going for 4 trophies, we'd end up going to Manchester, doing a double of cup trophies, falling narrowly short in the league, but as a stepping stone for what would become 3 league titles for Walter. That season, Chris, for you would play in the 2007-2008 League Cup, the 2 draw with Dundee United. Again, a roller coaster. Football Manager legend Mark Kerr laying it on for Chris Boyd to get Rangers back into it, and then Boydie coming up again, Boydie's winning penalty, so much in that day but that was the beginning of Walter bringing proper success back to the club. Talk us through that kind of cup final, and then we'll talk a wee bit about the European run, because unfortunately I think you get injured against St Johnstone in the Scottish Cup semi-final, I think, and it kind of stopped short for you, but that was another unbelievable season for Rangers.
Oh no, it was. I think it all gelled together when he came. He brought obviously life and a bounce back, and everybody started believing. Anytime Rangers, when he picked a Rangers squad, a Rangers team to step out in that football pitch, you were assured that they were going to get a result, they were going to win the football match, and ultimately came with a lot of trophies for that. So that season for myself, yeah, I did obviously get injured. I played in the semi-final. I think we played Hearts. I played well. I got man of the match, I'm sure. But in the Dundee United, when we played them in the final, I didn't have my best of games. I remember. I think I played until the 89th minute or so, and then obviously went into extra time. But the team got over the line. You are right in saying that it looked as if we were going to lose it until Boydie steps up, and fortunately enough, I got a winner's medal from that. The St Johnstone game, you are right. If you remember, it was myself and Naismith got injured in the same game. He did his knee and I did my ankle, which was unfortunate. The pitch wasn't great. It was very dry and sticky. I think I actually asked them to water it before, but they never said they could. And ultimately it resulted in that. Listen, my ankle was probably struggling from that season anyway, and that just tipped it over the edge, and I had to end up getting an operation, which ultimately, unfortunately, made me miss the European final. But the team obviously did the club proud in that. It was a tough game, but fantastic, obviously, that season to start seeing progressively the success that Walter Smith and the coaching staff were going to bring to the football club.
Yeah, you would then, I think your career at Rangers would come to an end. You would make your move. How did that happen, and how difficult was it for you to leave Rangers at that point in your career?
Well, first, anybody that like a kid coming through the academy, playing for Rangers, and then realising that maybe you have to move on, that's tough to take. Only knew Rangers, that's all I knew. It was a huge part of me. But you have to also make sure that you give yourself the best career you can. and you have to make tough decisions. What Walter Smith had developed and what he'd starting to achieve at the football club, I knew that, yes, I would have been a part of it, but maybe would have not been playing week in, week out, because he had a strong team and very, very good football players. What he brought into the football club and obviously inherited. So it's hard, Steve. It's not easy, but you just have to do it. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions, the decisions you wish could have been done a little bit differently for myself. But I moved on to a club like Cardiff. The club were fantastic with me, really, really. The manager was terrific because he could have easily have bargained for money. You know, I was out of contract 6 months. I would have been out of contract, but they just let me go to Cardiff. And I think nowadays that would have never ever have happened. But that just shows you how they dealt with it, and I couldn't thank them enough for that. They made it very, very easy for me to make that transition from Rangers into Cardiff, and then obviously my career goes on in a different path for that. It was a sad moment, but one moment everybody, I'm sure they can't argue with the fact that you still need to make sure that you have a career in the game. I just didn't want to be a bit back player. I'm a player that wants to play week in, week out, and I had to go elsewhere to do that.
Okay, let's look back on your Rangers career. What was your favourite Rangers moment?
I was scoring my debut for sure. Well, Blue Heavens watching as well. Scoring in my debut, that's incredible. That's to come on in 90 seconds and score and have that feeling. That's the best moment. There's other moments as well, but I would be wrong of me to say that's not the moment.
You've probably answered this question, so I'll ask it a wee bit differently. What do you think your best Rangers goal was?
Well, I'll not say the.
I have one in mind.
I'll not. You have one in mind?
I do.
Did you say, do you?
I think the one you scored against Dunfermline, where you dribbled in from the right, really tight angle, and you leathered it in the top of the roof of the net was really good.
Do you know what goal I liked? I think we played St Johnstone in the cup, and I dribbled all the way inside and I chipped the goalkeeper in a cup.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I remember that. I really liked that goal just because I was still trying. I wasn't really. I was coming through the ranks and maybe coming on. But then I think that was one of my first starts, and I knew I had to make an impact. So that was probably a goal that I remember a lot, just because obviously like any white player, like to talk about their goals that they dribble past a few players and then put it in a good position in the back of the net. So there was quite a lot. Listen, there's nothing wrong with as well for any kid that's going to watch this. As much as you talk about your fancy goals and your good goals, can you score that ugly goal, that one where the ball flashes across the face of goal and you just put the ball in the back of the net, a tap in? I've did that against obviously Hearts, and the ball's been put across the face of goal. They're the goals that you watch now at elite level, the wide players, the forward players, that you need to get into the back stick. You need to make sure you score inside the 6-yard box. They're just as important, because that will probably, help you in your development.
And not only the goals, Chris, the amount of assists you had and the amount of goals you were involved in. If anybody wants to go back and watch, Alex McLeish and Walter's early years at Rangers in his second spell, you were heavily involved in a lot of goals, and to assist as many must have given you just as much pride as the ones that you were involved in scoring.
100%. Like, as a wide player, assists were just as important to me, or even more important than it was scoring the goals back then. I wish obviously I took it a wee bit more seriously and had more focus and concentration and making sure I scored more and put that more demand in myself. But I loved assisting. I don't know why. I think it's obviously a wide player thing where there was no better feeling when you put that ball in front of somebody to then just tap the ball in, or to score that goal, or put that perfect cross in to finish off the good play that came from before it. I love assisting. I obviously still did until the end of my career.
Final question. Sum up your Rangers career and what it meant to you.
That's a
Nice,
tough
easy one to
question.
finish up with.
I know. I started with that. I would never ever be the football player I would have been and had the career that I would have been if I never had the upbringing that I did at Rangers. Not just the player, but the person as well. It's moulded me into obviously having been I was having a family, teaching them values and the fundamentals and your core beliefs. And that came from a huge part of that. It came from Rangers. So I can't thank them enough, not just to have developed me and given me the career that I had as a football player at Rangers, but also as a person. That's it in a nutshell. If I'm honest with you, Stevie, I'm ever indebted to Rangers Football Club for making me the player and the person that I am today as well.
Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure. I would just like to say thanks for everything that you've done for the football club, your performances over the years. I absolutely loved watching you. I really did. You were one of the ones that I always enjoyed. I think everybody enjoys like an attacking winger and a forward type player. You were one of the ones that I really enjoyed. Good luck. You've got some big things coming up in your career. And if we want to finish on that, how excited are you for the next step for Chris Burke?
Yeah, good. I'm really excited. Obviously, my journey at Kilmarnock's over. Been a coach there, got the opportunity to finish my career there, then be to coach there. Then I'm moving on now to another journey that will hopefully develop me and get me into my next stage in being a coach and being a good developer. Hopefully, I can grow there. I can learn a lot. And ultimately, I just want to make sure that as well that I'm trying to give, like my own self, give a career to players, whether it's at a younger age group or whether it's at an older age group. So, yeah, quite daunting at the same time, but one that I'm looking forward to when I move to London.
Yeah, congratulations on the move and good luck with it. Chris, thank you for coming on the show. It's honestly been such a pleasure, a real walk down memory lane. As I said, once again, thanks for everything. I really appreciate you coming on today.
No, thank you, Stevie. Appreciate it. And good luck in your show. I'll be listening when I'm walking the dog in the podcast. Not to my own one.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 5 of the Rangers Years meeting Chris Burke. Thank you for joining us. Speak to you soon.
The Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited, and CSD Air Conditioning, in partnership with Black Rooster and Art of Gold. Thank you for listening to or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.